It was a sweltering July afternoon in 1991 when 12-year-old Emily Parker left her school, waving goodbye to friends she would never see again. The streets of her small Tennessee town were quiet, the kind of quiet that made every creak of a loose board or rustle of leaves feel louder than usual. Emily had a routine. A short walk home past the old train tracks, a shortcut through the vacant lot near the abandoned warehouse, and then the turn onto Maple Street. But that day, she never made it past the tracks. Witnesses later recalled seeing her walking with a small backpack slung over one shoulder, looking around nervously, almost as if she sensed someone watching. By evening, when Emily hadn't returned, panic began to ripple through the town. Her mother, frantic, called every neighbor and retraced the route Emily usually took, hoping to find some trace, a discarded notebook, a shoe, anything that would point to where she had gone. The local police were called, but despite canvassing the area, questioning anyone who might have seen her, they found nothing. It was as if the girl had vanished into thin air. Dogs scarred the nearby woods, flashlights cut through the dark corners of empty buildings, but there was no sign of Emily, no footprints, and no clue to indicate where she had gone. Rumors began to swirl like wildfire. Some whispered that she had been taken by a stranger. Others suggested that she had run away, though Emily's friends and family knew better. The small town, usually calm and familiar, was suddenly clouded with fear and suspicion. Every parent checked their children twice that night, and every shadow seemed to hide something sinister. The story of Emily Parker's disappearance became a topic no one wanted to talk about too loudly. Yet everyone couldn't stop thinking about a chilling mystery that had appeared out of nowhere and left a lasting mark on the community. Years turned into decades, and Emily Parker's disappearance slowly faded from the front pages and the daily headlines, but for the town, it never truly disappeared. The case grew colder with each passing year, files gathering dust in the police archives, and leads that once seemed promising now felt like dead ends. New detectives came and went, some promising breakthroughs, others quietly leaving, discouraged by the lack of evidence. For the Parker family, the pain never dulled. Every holiday, every empty chair at the dinner table reminded them of the daughter they had lost. Friends moved away, neighbors tried to forget, but the shadow of Emily's disappearance hung over the town like a storm cloud that refused to clear. Detectives revisited old witness statements countless times, looking for overlooked clues. Some recalled fleeting glimpses of a stranger near the tracks, while others mentioned a peculiar car that never showed up again. Despite modern forensic techniques slowly developing, nothing concrete had emerged to point authorities toward the truth. Every photograph, every report, every scrap of paper seemed to whisper the same chilling message: Emily was gone, and the case was as unsolvable as it had been in 1991. The town's frustration grew, coupled with a quiet fear that some secrets were never meant to be uncovered. Then, in 2021, after 30 years of silence, a young detective named Sarah Mitchell took a fresh look at the files. She approached the cold case not as a series of dead ends, but as a puzzle whose pieces had simply been overlooked. As she pored over the yellowed photographs and handwritten notes, something tiny and almost invisible caught her eye: a locket in the background of a pawn shop inventory photo, one that had never been cataloged or investigated. Something about it didn't sit right. It felt like a whisper from the past, a hint that the decades-old mystery might finally have a thread to pull. Detective Sarah Mitchell knew immediately that the locket was more than just a forgotten piece of jewelry. Its delicate gold chain was tarnished with age, and the initials EP were engraved in a style unmistakably from the late 80s. What made it even more chilling was the tiny photograph tucked inside. A smiling Emily Parker, frozen in a moment of innocence that now felt hauntingly out of reach. Sarah could barely take her eyes off it. This locket had been sitting unnoticed for decades, waiting to be found. She traced it back to a small, dusty pawn shop on the outskirts of town, a place that seemed stuck in time, with creaking floorboards and shelves crowded with forgotten relics of countless lives. The pawn shop owner, an elderly man with wary eyes and a quiet demeanor, initially claimed he couldn't remember who had brought the locket in. But Sarah's persistence and the weight of 30 years of unanswered questions seemed to shake something loose in him. Slowly, he began to recount the day the locket arrived. A man in his late 20s, nervous and evasive, leaving it behind without a word. The details were vague, but enough to spark a trail, a thread that hadn't existed before. Every corner of that shop felt like it held whispers of the past, as if the locket itself were calling out, demanding to be noticed after all these years. As Sarah held the locket in her gloved hands, she felt a shiver run down her spine. She realized the significance of this discovery. It wasn't just a piece of evidence, it was a connection, a bridge between the past and the present. The pawn shop, with its dusty shelves and dim lighting, became a stage where decades-old secrets began to surface. Somewhere in the shadows of that tiny store lay a clue that could finally bring Emily Parker's story back to light. For the first time in 30 years, there was a tangible lead, one that promised answers the town had been desperate for, but had almost given up on. With the pawn shop locket as her breakthrough, Detective Sarah Mitchell dove headfirst into old records, receipts, and surveillance footage, determined to trace the person who had brought it in decades ago. Using a combination of old-style detective work and modern technology, she began piecing together the fragmented trail. Each clue seemed faint at first. A blurred figure on a long, forgotten tape, a partial license plate scribbled in the margin of a ledger, but gradually a pattern emerged. One name kept surfacing in whispers throughout the case files, a man who had been a person of interest back in 1991, yet never fully investigated. Sarah's investigation led her to surveillance footage from a neighboring shop, taken around the same time the locket was pawned. On the grainy black and white tape, a man appeared, moving nervously, constantly looking over his shoulder. His movements were subtle but deliberate, as if he knew someone was watching or feared that someone might. Forensic enhancements revealed details that had gone unnoticed for decades. The same man had been seen near the train tracks where Emily was last spotted. Every piece of evidence, every faint shadow on the tape pointed unmistakably toward him, and the puzzle that had baffled investigators for 30 years began to take a frightening shape. Confronted with the mounting evidence, the man eventually cracked under pressure. His confession was chilling, a story of deception, fear, and cruelty that the town had never imagined. He revealed the locations Emily had been taken, the lies he had told to keep the truth hidden, and the moments that had kept her memory trapped in mystery for decades. Sarah listened in disbelief, realizing that the pawn shop locket, a simple, unassuming object, had been the key that unlocked everything. Every unanswered question, every sleepless night off the Parker family began to make sense in the grim clarity of the confession. After the confession, the authorities followed the chilling trail laid out by the suspect, retracing every step and visiting every location he had mentioned. Deep in an overgrown section of woods near the old train tracks, hidden beneath decades of leaves and debris, they discovered remnants of Emily Parker's belongings. Each item told a fragment of the story that had been buried in silence for 30 years. A faded notebook, a torn ribbon from her backpack, and pieces of the locket she had once worn around her neck. The discovery was both heartbreaking and necessary, a grim confirmation of the truth that the town had long feared. The Parker family, now older and carrying years of grief, were brought in to identify the items. The moment was heavy with emotion, their faces reflecting the pain of loss and the bittersweet relief of finally knowing what had happened. The townspeople followed the case closely, their curiosity and sorrow mixing with a cautious hope that justice would finally be served. For decades, Emily had been a ghost in their memories. Now, she was a real story with a real ending, one that demanded acknowledgement and remembrance. The evidence collected not only provided closure, but also served as a reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating effects of unsolved mysteries. Even after the case was officially closed, the impact lingered. The pawn shop locket, once overlooked, became a symbol of perseverance, the small but vital clue that had reopened the investigation and brought light to a darkness that had overshadowed the town for generations. It reminded the detectives and the townspeople alike that no secret, no matter how deeply buried, could remain hidden forever. Each layer of the investigation revealed new pieces of the puzzle, from long-forgotten witnesses coming forward to small details in old files being re-examined. The story of Emily Parker, her disappearance, and the decades-long search for the truth became a chilling testament to the power of persistence, timing, and the smallest objects holding the heaviest weight of revelation. As the town slowly began to heal, the memory of Emily Parker remained a haunting reminder that some mysteries refused to stay buried. A simple locket, overlooked for decades, had reopened a door to the truth, proving that even the smallest clue can unravel the darkest secrets. Emily may never come back, but her story has finally been told, her name finally remembered, and justice at last served. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there, another cold case is waiting for its own key, lying quietly in the shadows, ready for someone brave enough to uncover the truth.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.